Orum is a company built by sales development professionals. So as a result, we're really obsessed with data in this space. We released a 2024 State of Sales Development report. It's based on a survey of 1,000 sales leaders and professionals. It's full of data about the current go-to-market strategies and investments in SaaS organizations ranging from 10 million in size to over 1 billion in size. So really a lot of rich data in there. I am joined by Kelly Licthenberger, VP of Sales Development at HiBob, as well as Daisy Chung, Senior Director of Revenue Strategy at Orum, to talk about some of these metrics and changes that are happening in the space. They have combined more than 3 decades of experience in sales development and have seen the industry through tons of cycles, business cycles, tech hype cycles. You've seen it all. So Kelly and Daisy, can you each start with an introduction of just who you are and also how you got into sales development?
You bet. I'll jump in. So Kelly Licthenberger, VP of Sales Development at HiBob. And I am also a speaker on this topic. It's one of my favorite things to talk about is what's happening in the SDR world. And have done this my entire career, started as an SDR myself, have now just recently published a book about how to prospect and be successful at it. So it's something near and dear to my heart.
Thanks, Kelly.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Daisy Chung. I'm the head of revenue strategy at Orum. I started my SDR career about a decade ago. I actually fell into it. I had no idea what an SDR was. I was actually looking to work at like a Google, a Facebook, one of those big companies. And I took this interview as an SDR as practice for my, other interviews I really cared about. And that interview, I met great people. I was actually at an HR company similar to HiBob as well. The CEO, the leadership, the idea of just selling and being on a quota really scared me, but also really excited me. And I took the leap of faith, and it's been my career since. And absolutely love the space so much that now I work at a company like Orum, where we talk to SDR teams all day long. So very similar, Kelly. I dedicated the rest of my career to it too.
Except I've been in it many more years. I didn't say how many, so that's how far down the road I am.
Do the math. The 30 minus 10 equals definitely a lot more.
I love speaking with folks in the space because there's a lot of passion in it. And I think, when I started my career in marketing, I worked alongside a lot of SDRs, and it took a lot of time for me to see how much curiosity and agility it takes to be successful in this role. So props to the two of you, and I think the audience is going to get a lot out of both of your experiences. So, I want to start our conversation by summarizing a few themes that became apparent when we compared the results from our survey in 2023 and 2024. Number 1, back to basics in terms of the sales development execution. Number 2, which is not surprising for anybody, sentiment and adoption of AI. And then the last one is a ton of optimism in terms of performance and turnover. So let's dive into each of these topics. First of all, execution and back to basics. In 2023, I think we saw a ton of lower performances across companies. I think it was a tough year after the ZERP years in SaaS. And there's been, what we see is that there's been a ton of organizational turnover. And as a result, companies are sort of rebuilding their teams, going back to basics in terms of talent, process, and being a ton more disciplined in how they're executing. Kelly, is that what you're seeing? Is that what you're sort of talking about with your teams? Tell us a little bit more.
So I think one of the things that really stands out to me is coming out of COVID, the world really changed. So all of a sudden, when people weren't having the meetings face to face, it has become more apparent than ever that when we talk about back to basics, that's how do you reach out to people without being face to face? How do you get them interested? The number of touches it now takes to get to somebody live, being that they're in many different places, not in all one office anymore. What number am I calling? Am I email? These are all things that you have to have a skill set in them to then be proficient enough to be able to get people to respond to you, to be able to have these conversations, to then even open the actual literal door to have you in anywhere. So how do you do that? And so when we talk about back to basics, it's one of the things that I am really working with my teams on, and how to look at, do we have the skill set necessary for just opening lines on a phone call? Are we jumping into feature functionality too quickly? Are we able to have an actual conversation? Are we stopping and listening? Are we being engaging? Or is it just how quickly can we get to the next step? Are our emails, are they landing? Are they too much like everybody else? All of those things are super important as we not only finish out 2024, but really look at what we need to be successful in 2025.
Thanks, Kelly. You said a lot there. I think those are all really, really important skills, especially teaching reps and teams that you need to see how it's going and not just blindly follow a playbook sort of through the way, right? How do you think about building like systems and SOPs or like management frameworks to help your frontline managers instill that in the reps themselves?
Well, so in doing this, I think it's really important to know we can have, where you said playbooks, I think that's a key piece to this, because people want to have the playbook, roll it out, and everybody does the same thing. Everybody has the same bag of tricks. You go for it. That's really old school. We're going to have different territories are going to respond differently, different people. I say it all the time to my team. There are going to be things that certain people do that, opening doors that I couldn't open, calls that they get through, I couldn't get through. So we can have some general basic guidelines, but then I try to teach the reps that they have to get their own style. They have to be able to, again, be conversational. They have to make this that they really want to learn from their end prospects. If you're not interested in anything else except getting that meeting or getting them to, your pipeline, or then you're just in sales, and people don't want to, they hate that. That's one of the things they say. Is this a sales call? Is that? No, if this is not a sales call, that's what I say to people. This is to get information, to have this conversation. That's what you want to do. So I think it's really important that we are training, again, getting the basics, but letting people have the ability to be who they are and sound natural on the phone, not sound like a robot. If so, then then just be an AI bot, but people don't want that. So how do we do that? I work with the different teams. Using Orum, we can listen back to calls. We can see, where is it that people might, be struggling to actually continue a conversation versus jumping right into feature functionality. All of that. I think it's really important to inspect what we expect as managers. So listening really, but teaching from a way that is, again, going to be more natural than just a sales approach.
What I'm hearing from you is like there's as much talent development and encouraging of people putting themselves and their creativity and personality into the role as much as accomplishing this quota carrying role.
Oh, absolutely. Coaching is huge for me. And it's really, again, giving the team a foundation and then letting them meet me where they're going to feel comfortable. Because again, a natural conversation, no problem. All of a sudden you hand somebody a script or say, this is how you do it, and they're freezing up like that. Don't know how to do that. So really, it's just taking the training and then being able to use it and making it your own.
Yeah, I think just there, that's kind of like what we're seeing in the change of sales development, where there's a lot of AI, a lot of tools, a lot of functionality, and that's always going to be changing. What we see today might just be like the sliver of a big mountain of what's to come with technology these days. But what's always going to remain the same that I'm sure like we saw, over a decade ago and now is that human element. You can't train these AI bots, these AI tools to do what people do, which is the intentful listening, the having actual conversations where you're asking questions where you care. Because in today's world, if you don't rely on that, every discovery question, every first question from a cold call, it's gonna sound the same. It might sound very well put together because an AI bot did it, but it's all gonna sound the same and it's not gonna stand out. I think in a world of change and technology, people have to continuously stand out and elevate for us to like make that crack in. So I see this whole landscape changing the world where it's a lot easier with modern technology, but now there's a kind of more pressure to elevate people to a new level. And we see that talent market go, that bar set higher and higher because you kind of have to, because of all these great tools, you have to stand out against the other candidate looking for that job, which means you have to be even more empathetic, more willing to lean in and making that deeper connection.
Daisy, I'm going to ask you like this, a similar question as I asked Kelly. How do you train and how do you coach reps on that?
So I think I've always been a big believer that people are the biggest investment to any company, to any relationship, even your personal relationship. People make your energy go good or bad. And so it starts with hiring the right people, and it starts with hiring the profiles that makes the most sense. I've always been a big advocate that you don't need a ton of experience to be good at like a sales development role. Experience helps, but that grit, that kind of it factor you get from someone, whether or not they had extra experience, goes a long way. Their why, their how they even try to get that job interview, how they kind of multi-thread and prospect it around you, how maybe they sent you a gift and it wasn't over the top. Like all those things matter because it kind of shows you their sales process and how they connect. And so I think it's hiring from the start, and it's hiring, as we all know, like coachable people. But coachable is such a vague term because everyone receives coaching in a different way. And so however you structure that team, I think hiring the right folks is first and foremost, because when you grow a team to be as big as HiBob, you need to trust your frontline leaders. So these SDRs you're hiring is not just an SDR, it's the managers of tomorrow. And you're kind of future seeing, future hiring that. And so I think it begins with the people. And then after the people, it begins with expectations, where a lot of times I think people are acting on their own and not to the whole policies because the expectations aren't set from the beginning. This is what I expect from you. This is what I need from you. This is how I'll compensate you. This is how I'll promote you. Being crystal clear and following through. At the end of the day, I see a lot of sales professionals really incentivized and motivated by their comp plan, as they should be. But if it's not clear cut of what's okay and what's not okay, that's when you get a hodgepodge of things. So that's kind of the broad answer. If you want to drill in the more specific answer, I believe every KPI, every day-to-day interaction has to be focused on your end goal. If your end goal is meaningful conversation, relationship, and diving deeper, then instead of KPIs that say make 100 dials, it's, find 10 connections that you can be on a texting basis with end of week. Like these are the KPIs that show a real relationship that will elevate these SDRs to become the next leader of tomorrow. And when that elevation happens, that's when things move for the company.
I think, on that too, I want to just extend a little bit, because I think what happens in sales roles, especially when people are new to their role, they're looking at their comp plan, they're coming into it, and they want to get to that end result, which is, how do I make that money? And then it changes how they act during the day. Meaning, we make the money by how you spend your time. So we can't get that back. So it's really coaching and teaching the team how to spend their day, where to spend their day to get to those KPIs that then lead to the end result, which is money. So again, not rushing it to get to this. Okay, well, I've got to do this many meetings or demos. Let's back up. We can get there, but let's not just think about today. How are we setting up our week? How are we setting up our month? How are we setting up our quarter? And what's going to bring us the most success to do that beyond just right now, this second. So I see a lot of time being wasted. So when you talk about that training, that's one of the things I think is super important. That's another thing that's very different. Different territories are going to have different times of the day that people are responding better. So you have to look at that too and really know mornings might be better for this area, afternoons are better, maybe at the West Coast for people. So all of those things are really important. And that's also part of training. So we're not just looking at it that I had this many calls today. That's not going to get you anywhere. You have to look at the whole picture. And then on top of it, it's really tapping into what you were talking about, Daisy, with the going deeper besides just the technology training. It's looking at those soft skills now. So bringing people, meeting them where they are, and what can we do with certain soft skills that people just innately have, and I want to capitalize on them. So again, people come to the role and they feel better about what they're doing because they're being themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think you made a good point, kind of sharing how people need to know what they're doing every day, every week, and having that metric. Because I think one of the biggest frustrations for SDRs and A's alike is when they feel like they're doing a bunch of work and man hour, but it's not equalizing the results. And that's when your day to day and week isn't structured the right way. But having that structure and iterating over and over again is change made so that effort does equal result or some type of result gets you happier reps, which makes the whole cycle better too.
In some ways, I feel like it's a role that's most like, like a professional athletes where you have a nutrition program, you have a training program, you need to get adequate sleep, right? So from the two of you, just to summarize on that, from what you see as the basics, number one is the right type of talent, that's the building blocks of the team. Also making sure that they're coachable, having a management team that can coach on soft skills, really building relationships, setting them up with the right KPIs and structure that are aligned to what the company goals are. So meaningful conversations that result in pipeline and revenue. So those are some things that I'm hearing as teams have gone back to, the basics in 2024. I want to move into an area which, Daisy, you already started to touch on a little bit, which is AI. I mean, it's 2024 in sales development. We can't really not talk about it. So back at ChatGPT actually launched just less than 2 years ago in November 2022. So if I remember back in 23, there was a lot of excitement, but also some fear, right? I think that was when a lot of the conversations around like, is this going to take my job? Like, what does this really replace? And since then, we've seen a ton of various tools come up, a lot of experimentation that's come around. I think some companies have actually invested in AI and now know what sort of works for them, what doesn't work for them anymore. And the data that we're seeing in our report and in our survey is 80% of sales leaders say that they have already implemented AI tools, and 87% say that it's positively impacted their sellers' daily work experience. So the sentiment has sort of shifted from a little bit of fear to one that's way more optimistic, very much welcoming. That adoption has come. I'm besides AI dialing, which both of you guys employ, what are some of the biggest areas of AI adoption you see? Kelly, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I think we're in I think the future of sales development is really a blend of high tech and high touch. So how do we embrace AI within that? AI for me is not to take over the role, but to highlight some areas that maybe in sales we're not as skilled at. Writing that beautiful email, response to what are the objections I'm not doing well at answering. AI is great for helping us with some of that other, coaching and really getting to the heart of where can I be successful. But what over the past few years, I've seen different things with AI become people I hear all the time, and I love it when they say the cold call is dead. Fantastic, because guess what? I'm going to get through then. If nobody else is calling, I win. So AI hasn't taken over to do the role. As a matter of fact, people are starting to crave more of that human interaction when they need things. If we think about our own personal life, when we have to call any kind of line that we know it's going to be a bot on the other end, how upset we get. That here we go. Hit this number, hit that number. I just want a person, which I think is really helping towards this role. So for me, AI is really important, but it's really important in just certain areas. Again, to assist with the role and to make me more successful. It is absolutely not taking the role of an SDR, and I don't see that happening more and more, even with chat on websites. Because of AI, now I feel more people don't want to go in and start engaging with a bot because once again, they'd rather have the person or download a piece of content that they can maybe get the answer. So I really think it's not taking over the role, just enhancing it.
Yep, I'm in 1,000% alignment. AI should not be taking over the role, but be an avenue to enhance and also accelerate that person's growth. Like I would love to see, and we're seeing these tools and technology, not just for automating calling, but automating prospecting, automating data enrichment, letting me know if the competition is using, that tool, their renewal dates, their churn dates, like all those tidbits of information that accelerates those conversations. That's where I now expect the rep to be really, really good, or at least getting better at having really thoughtful conversation. That's where I love AI, because now I want reps to just be elevating the way they talk, the way they think, the way they drive the sales process forward, because they have AI helping with these avenues. And with that, because there's so many tools, technology out there, and I'm confident in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to be an accelerated amount of tools and technology. It can become really tough to even evaluate. And even if you're a champion of one product, and shout out to all the champions of Orum, it might not make sense for your future company. Like, you have to really evaluate each tool for the company you're at, the stage they're at, and sometimes you outgrow tools, sometimes you don't. And I see a world where RevOps actually takes on a more stringent role, because it's no longer just buying the technology that's the loudest out there, buying the technology that, it seems great. You have to seriously evaluate, ask all the questions. Like, evaluation is a strenuous process, but if you do it right and you enable and launch it correctly, then it goes a long way for the SDR leader to maximize the technology. So long story short, I see as a world where everyone's role is elevated and the folks are evaluating technology. It becomes a more important job function.
And I think I have teams globally. So I am throughout the world. So we look at not everything is cookie cutter either for each location. So that's one of the things that AI can help us with, is to quickly understand, again, for our playbooks, if we're going back to that, objections in the US may be very different than objections that I'm getting in Amsterdam or Berlin or Australia, so they're depending on, different industries, all of that. So AI really does help with that, and agree with the RevOps piece. We're able to get data at a much faster clip. And I think that's where AI really helps, is using it in a data driven way to really get those results and get to the information that I think is most important. We talked about, the sports analogy, and I know that comes up a lot with sales, but, I teach, one of the things I say to my reps all the time is to think about a baseball card, know your stats. You have to know your stats inside and out, because if something's not working, you need to change it immediately. Where people fall into times of all of a sudden they're not doing well and they come to me and they say, I can't believe it. I've been doing the same thing and it worked. Now it doesn't. And that surprises them. I'm said that's the issue. The same things aren't always. You have to look at reinventing. Were you changing up different industries you're talking to, different titles you're talking to? Let's look at that. So being able to get to those results and that data quickly is really important.
Yeah. I want to push and help us get a little bit more, even more tactical than what we're talking about right now. So when we think about the, earlier we were talking about the ways that reps are spending time and ways in which those pockets of time can be automated. Now, of course, Orum supports one aspect of that, which is that giving your reps the ability to reach their prospects with warmth of the phone, right, at scale, and doing that at scale certainly automates a ton of time. What are other activities you see AI really? Is it, email generation? Is it replies? Is it stringing in pieces of information that tends to be disparate across platforms? Like, where have you seen success really automating these activities away?
One thing is taking people away from having to do the enormous amount of research on companies and different roles before they ever call in. It's a huge game changer because now we can do, 3 facts in 3 minutes to know that industry, to know a title. I can quickly get from AI, what does a CPO care about, top 3 things they care about in 2025, and then really get information on that. So again, I can look at something very broadly. It used to be reps would spend hours and hours, going through all kinds of information just to get on the phone. And a second later, the conversation goes another way and they have no information. So it's very helpful in that way, and to direct how you're going to start your call, who you're going to call, your ICPs. That's where I find it super helpful.
That makes a ton of sense. And I can very much see, research, while very easy to do, is really time intensive, especially when you have multiple cases happening at the same time. So that makes a ton of sense. Where do you see success for that, Daisy? Like across the customers or, various leaders that you've worked with?
Yeah, I think it all comes back to, I really like Kelly's point of having iterating playbooks, because I think what's happening in this world where there's a lot of great technology, a lot of great automation, is people think that you do it and it goes well, and you don't really change when things are changing, ahead of you. Because in the past, we didn't have this much technology. Everyone had the same, a couple tech tools. Everyone had the same couple cold call openers. Like, you get really comfortable with what's out there, which is the same emails, the same jokes. It's all kind of very similar. And the reps that stood out are the reps that could really connect that joke or send, add one more thing to that email that makes it a little different. But in today's world, like, you really have to step it up to stand out, because customization, like, I get customized emails all the time where it says, hey, I saw you worked at this company, or you've been here for that long. Like, that's the basic. In order to elevate, you need to go 2, 3, 4 steps deeper in terms of customization. You need to understand what kind of prospect you're working with. Where do they attend conferences? What do they care about? What do they post about? It's more beyond than just their job that makes them human and really interested in things. And so that's where you have to iterate your playbook, and you have to always be on your toes, learning month after month, quarter after quarter. And that's where AI allows you to be. And that's where I think AI can never replace a human being, because that type of emotional intelligence and care really comes from a place of genuine interest and genuinely trying to solve your customers' problems. That's not just surface level, because surface level, I'm sure you and 5 other competitors can solve the problem, but you got to dig multiple layers deeper to understand how you're going to really uniquely solve that problem for them.
I like that point, Daisy. There's a certain level of emotional intelligence and reasoning combined in that craft that it's really, really difficult for programs to replicate. Kelly, I know that you thought a lot about emotional intelligence
Yes.
in the era of sales development. Tell us about some of the things that you've studied there and learned over, the last 20 years of experience.
Absolutely. So yes, I recently published a book, talks a lot about emotional intelligence over artificial intelligence. In sales, I think it's really important. And, when technology provides us all of this these great ways to speed to lead and all of those things that we'll hear, that's great. But that human connection is still what's going to build, even though, again, people will go back and forth about the relationship building. It's that human connection, though, that gets you to that next place. I don't know of anybody who's just closing deals and without actually having spoken with somebody. I think it's more important than ever because they're saying customers come to us, they have 85% of the info that they actually have already garnered on their own. So they're coming in with their own. So they just want the answers as well. So on top of that, with people saying, oh, they already have the information. Isn't it nice when all of a sudden somebody can ask a question and try to get you engaged at a different level? That's what people love. All of a sudden now you flip the script and having a conversation. Well, tell me more about that. Learn from it. And you're going to get much farther. I think it's super helpful to understand that you're going to connect with prospects by being empathetic. At the end of the day, people only personally change what you're using now or buy something new if the pain is great enough. So when you think about pain in general, let's start meeting then in an area of, okay, you have an actual issue. Let's talk about how can we solve this together. That's what people want. They want to make sure that who they're going into business with too at the end of the day is they're going to know who to call. They're going to feel comfortable if there is an issue. People are making these purchases that, at the end of the day could cost them their roles if they make the wrong decision. So that's where the emotional intelligence really helps. So it's beyond the product. It's learning who they are. Why is it important? Chances are it's beyond the company. It's an issue that's going to affect them, their role, their job. So get to know them, get to understand why it's so important. And you're only going to do that with emotional intelligence. So again, AI can bring you the data on the company, the role of that person at general level, but it's not going to get you beyond surface level.
Yeah, I think a couple of different things that you touch on that are really resonating with me is, when you think about the world of B2B go to market, a lot of it is kind of gaining the trust of individuals who are these decision makers or influencers within their company to do something, right? And it actually, you said 85. Did you say like 85% of the decisions are already made before you talk to them?
That's what the latest numbers are.
That's right. That's what the studies say, right? Because everybody has done some level of research. And so it's actually about building a trust with the individual that's at hand, like understanding their problem and helping to disarm and lower that person's guard when it comes to speaking with someone they're just meeting to for them to trust you and tell you a little bit more about the problem they're facing.
Correct.
Yeah. And Adam, thank you so much for dropping Kelly's book in the chat.
Thank you.
If you guys want to check it out. Well, great. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about, the optimism that is happening in this space. Maybe it is in spite of AI, maybe it is as a result of AI. I'm not so sure. But some of the data that we're seeing here that's really promising is first of all, in 23, more than half of SDRs were turning over in that year. In 24, we're seeing SDRs stay in their roles for longer. And 80% of the time when they are leaving their roles, they're actually just taking a different role or getting a promotion within the same organization. So it really feels like over the last year, the function has gotten its foot back under itself and things have stabilized. Something else that we see that's super promising is despite quotas moving up, within the last year, 75% of sales leaders really believe that the say that SDR teams are actually hitting their quotas compared to 50% in 2023. So those are all metrics that are, saying, hey, we are going up and to the right towards a more optimistic, definitely great 2024 and also more optimistic 2025. Is that optimism in the market also what the two of you are seeing? Daisy, maybe you can start this time.
Yeah, I'd say yes. I've always been bullish on the SDR role and still am today, and great to see the data kind of shows that. I think part of it is because when COVID happened, there were a lot of layoffs and things like that. And that really does help push folks to like step up their game, and or when you're hiring, you're more particular because you have a flood of candidates now, unfortunately, because of the layoffs. And so I think it has pushed SDRs kind of to this new level. And I also think because of the flurry of AI technology, like managers and leaders expect more from their reps, and reps are delivering that. And when they deliver that, not only do they hit their quota, but they're also learning and growing and becoming more elevated professionals, which makes them want to stay at the company. When you buy technology, you're investing in them because their gears are turning how to maximize this technology. And they are more happy at the workplace because they have technology to use and leverage and learn and grow from. And I think I'm even more optimistic. I'm very bullish that the next leaders of tomorrow, whether it's a sales leader, CEO, founder, it's going to come from the SDR background, because now SDRs are elevated to really use your skill set at a younger age. Usually SDRs are a little younger. This is the entry level role, but because they are forced and pushed and to use all these skill sets and learn to be a really good communicator, really good at having deep conversations, honestly, skills that AEs, we recruit and train AEs for, they're going to have a head start versus a lot of AEs and myself included. I didn't have those type of technology to elevate me quicker when I was younger. So I'm even more optimistic that the leaders of tomorrow are going to come from the SDR functionality because they're able to grow and expand themselves so quickly at a young age.
I think it's all of the things that you're saying, it's really important for me to let people know it's a hard role. I mean, we know it, people say it, day in and day out, facing rejection. How do I reinvent myself? How do I reinvent my playbook to be successful? My messaging, all of those things. What makes this role really vital to all of sales is the fact that once you learn the objection handling, how to get through on a phone call, you will meet some of the best salespeople you will ever know. So again, if we go back to the pandemic hit, there were really seasoned sales professionals that no longer had a pipeline and had no idea how to build one. Because it had been years since they cold called. It had been years since they dealt with rejection. It had been years since they had to, create certain things themselves. So this actually leads really well into now this new group of SDRs, just if they're coached properly, trained properly, can be some of the best sales people within the corporation. Not only that, there's other roles within CS, within other teams that it's really important to bring these reps to SEs. So we've been seeing lots of paths and places that SDRs can go and be successful. And how great that we can now truly say we have a path within our company. We spend so much time training and put so much effort into these roles that, gosh, it's great to see people get to stay now. So that's one thing that we work really hard on.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the data that we're seeing from this year's survey just echoes that, right? A lot of the skill sets that you're putting into these reps. I mean, I used to say that they're kind of like the bench for the rest of your go-to-market organization. We've seen SDRs at Orum become CSMs, SEs, like you said, and even join our marketing team and really have a ton of those instincts of how to speak to prospects and be a great, message creator, right? So I totally see that as well. Maybe like a really, really quick last question, because I know that I'm seeing that we just have a few minutes left. And folks, feel free to keep dropping questions for the panelists in the last few minutes. What are one or two predictions you have for the coming year that you want to share with this group?
For myself, it's the, focus on building your emotional intelligence. So working on those soft skills, making sure that the reps really have that and understand how to ask questions versus answer questions, and really meet the prospect at, to figure out the pain, really understanding what's happening and is it more affecting them or the team or the company. So skills development beyond just the cold call, super important. I think it's also important to have engagement strategies that are omni channels. So making sure we're giving skill sets in creating videos. So beyond just emails and the phone call. So how do we do fun videos? How do we look at personalization in different areas? And then when it comes to AI enhanced coaching and performance feedback. So really using the AI metrics to really understand each rep and what makes them successful and today and what can help them in the future be more effective at the role.
Great prediction. Daisy?
My prediction is going to be focused on, I think there's going to be more of a push towards the revenue. And what I mean by that is we're going to see a lot more comp plans focused on revenue. We're going to see a lot more benchmark focus on revenue. Revenue is a team sport. And that means, we're going to see a lot more like, when SDR is booking meetings, we should see more tapping all the networks to like get that meeting in. When you're evaluating new tech tools, like there's going to be more of a push to see how does that tech tool actually equals dollar amount. I know a lot of times there's a bunch of ROI calculators, all that fun stuff, but it's going to be scrutinized as it should be, because at the end of the day, whether we're in a recession era or not, it comes down to the dollar amount a company makes. And so there's going to be a big push to understand and push for that. And it's going to be an omni-channel. It's not only on the SDR to drive pipeline, it's on marketing, it's on partnership, it's on all those three channels working together. And it's on the AE to leverage multiple ways to close that revenue. And it's on our CS team to let us know, was this good or bad revenue? Because that's also a difference. And we need happy, repeatable customers for a company to thrive. I think on that note, because it's going to be an omni-channel effect to drive more revenue, it's also an omni-channel effect for anyone at a company to learn and grow. It's almost not enough for you to just get trainings from your managers and trainings internally. You see a lot more of these LinkedIn influencers with a lot of different content. You see a lot more of these conferences, events. You're meeting people in the world out there, because you kind of need that different perspective for you to grow the most at that company and drive revenue for the company. So I've seen omni-channel as not just a word for prospecting, but for driving revenue, for learning, for growing, for the end effect of revenue.
I love that. I love that. So just really aligning the metrics of the team and goals of the team to the broader company's goals. So let me share some of the questions from the group. And first, I wanted to share this answer. Thank you, Adam, for already addressing it. So Jess asked, how close is AI SDRs when it comes to making cold calls? Because we already see them calling customer care. So that's the customer care is a different use case. So we do see AI voice in that for cold calls and B2B sales calls. That's currently not legal in regulation. So we see AI SDRs doing emails, but right now that's not something that regulators are allowing, because you can kind of imagine the moral hazard it begins. So just want to share that. The next question's from Dave, is for Kelly. You mentioned earlier that playbooks were old school and not relevant anymore. What is your recommendation to ensure your teams are all doing the same thing? versus figuring it out on their own? I think you touched on this a little bit. But.
Yeah. So I don't think that we're throwing away playbooks. So sorry if that came across. That's not it. We still have playbooks and we still believe in playbooks. What I wanted the message to be is that you can have a playbook for the team, but you have to also then make sure that people know that they bring different skill sets to the table. So we can provide them, but if everybody's just started on the same path of just all responding the same way, that doesn't help either. So you need to take the playbook and have it be a baseline of what we need to do every day and how we're going to go about a message, but then you need to make it your own. So even if sometimes I've had reps that are saying something different, as long as they're not making up what we do as a company, lying about the end result, no matter how different it may sound, if it works for them, I say go for it. However, I'm not going to put it in the playbook that it works for all if it's a little bit out there. But again, I want to give people the ability to make the day their own and to make the call their own.
That makes a lot of sense. And then there's a lot of discussion in the chat about this already. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, Daisy, how important it is for SDRs to have industry knowledge and strong understanding of the product they're selling.
I think it never hurts. It's definitely a great plus, but I think it's more important you find the folks that are, salivating to work at your company for a specific reason. Maybe they really love you as a leader and they've always been inspired and that's why they want to work at your company. Maybe they've never once, let's say it's an HR company and they've never once done anything in HR, but they've always been drawn to that field because of XYZ reasons. And they've once wanted to be an HR leader. I don't care what the reasons are, but it sounds very sound why they're so passionate, what they're willing to do to succeed. That would impress me a lot more than someone who's worked in HR for 10, 20 years and has all the knowledge and knows all the vocabulary than someone who's super passionate, super interesting. Because as Kelly mentioned, the job is hard. It's not easy. You have to want to be in it. You have to want to learn. You have to want to grow. You have to even get excited from the rejection. For you to last in this role, to do well and to continue propelling, you have to want it bad. And industry knowledge is not enough to want something bad.
All right. Thank you guys both so much. And we're now a couple minutes over. Thank you for being so engaged, this great group. If you have any additional questions, feel free to message me and the two other panelists here. Please join me in thanking Kelly, thanking Daisy for the great conversation today. And if you're interested in Kelly's book, she has it on pre-order. We'll make sure we include that.
It's officially out there now, so it's off the pre-order.
All right. Thanks, everybody, so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.